Throughout history, there have existed what we call great men, those who rise above and become heroes and legends within their own cultures, countries, and societies. You can look at almost any, if not every culture or country, and find a great men in their history, whether they be those who reach the exact heights of humanity, such as Alexander, Caesar, Napoleon, or maybe those who have regional influence, who are regionally great. Think of any of the various kings of the many empires that have rose and fall over time. Those who may be great, but maybe not on the world stage. Every society has one, and we all venerate them, or at least we have for the greatest times. Books are written about them centuries after, long after their deaths, detailing their exploits and how they rose to power and how they maintained it, and how the world has been further impacted by their actions many, many centuries down the line. Great men will continue to rise, even now. Although they may not take the same form as those who conquered in the past, they will still rise. But there's become a disturbing trend over the past, few years, where we seem to be incapable of respecting and venerating those of the past. Now, I am one for all jokes and having fun and satirizing and making fun of things, but it seems that time and time again, those who exist today are risen up, and those who lived back then are cast down. And while it is true that maybe the people in the past did not always do the greatest things, were not the greatest people, that's not really what we look for them to. We don't look for them for total morality, as many people were immoral and did bad things. However, they are still great. They still reached far beyond any of us, if not all of us, will ever reach. They did things that changed the fabric of history and the world to go. They realigned the world's powers. They created new societies, new countries, new empires. And threw their people, possibly from being downtrodden to the forefront of the world, becoming societies that those would emulate. Alexander's conquest, all the way to India, showed that the Greeks could be in a militaristic dominating power. Rome, do I even need to say anything? From a barbarian nation in Italy to the largest empire of antiquity, and maybe even the greatest empire to ever exist. And sure, there are empires that existed that are larger and have, less consistently important or venerable leaders. Think of the Brits and their globe-trotting empire that was the largest the world has and probably ever will see. We have great men. We always have. We always will. But disturbingly, it seems that these days we don't want to venerate them the same way. Take a look at Napoleon, the movie that just came out. As someone who is, I wouldn't say a fan of Napoleon. I enjoy learning about the guy, and he's done a lot of great things, and he really brought France to the forefront of history, and even more so than in the past, and made them the predominant and prevailing threat to the world of his time. I mean, coalition upon coalition was formed to rise against him, to try to prevent his meticulous and incessant increase in power and scope of his empire. That is something worth praising for, and that has been done in the past over and over again, but disturbingly and recently, we seem to not want to do that anymore. Rather, to tear him down and to, as they're doing in this most recent release Scott film, make him seem to be more of a joke rather than the emperor he was, the man who rose, who took the world in his palm and nearly conquered the entire damn thing. We have gone so far to denigrate him, making him look nothing more than a lucky cuckold who, maybe really didn't deserve all the praise. Maybe, it was just the incompetence of others, not his own brilliance. And sure, there is luck in anything. There are lucky things that happen to every empire, to every conqueror, to every society that allows them to catapult themselves to the forefront. But then, at the same time, those men still have to fight those battles. You still have to lead. You still have to conquer. And not everybody can do that. Not everybody has done that. There's a differentiator here that allows some men to rise above and far above their contemporaries, to become to the forefront of existence, to become the kings of their own destiny and the destiny of the world around them. Not everyone can say that. Not every ruler can claim to be that guy, to be the one who rose his people up, because not everyone can do that. And those who exist today and those who lead our societies today further exemplify those who do not have those qualities. We have great leaders in every time period. And maybe there are some great leaders across these countries today. I know that the Argentinians are excited about Milei. And, there was always that buzz about Donnie and what he did in America. But are they really that great of leaders? If you compare them to even the great Americans, do any of them compare to Washington, to Jackson, to Eisenhower? These contemporaries among their own nation who rose up either through military strength or through their own leadership and made a better American society today than they existed beforehand. Truly, I believe that the amount of great leaders we have today is very small. Possibly in the single digits. Maybe not even one, if I'm being completely honest with myself. Leadership in the world stage today seems to be very, very marginalized, more focused on the countries themselves rather than the men who lead it. And that is fine. In liberalized democracy, that typically is what happens. Men are not given the time needed to successfully become conquerors in their own day. And that's fine. But at the same time, we should not denigrate those who came in the past to uphold the weakened and somewhat toothless leaders we have in the modern era. It's not a modern day occurrence. This happens all the time. Think of, the Spanish socialists destroying the tombs of crypts of saints right before the Civil War. Things happen. They always do. They always seem to happen again and again, where those who exist today are insecure, and so to fortify their own power, remove the ability of us to venerate the heroes of our past, the heroes that, inspire us to this day. That has always happened, and that always will happen. And it's even more apparent today, as every single piece of media dedicated to one of these ancient heroes, or even those of heroes of not that long ago, are seen to denigrate them, to tear them down, for reasons that, may seem like haha funny comedy. We love making fun of people. These people deserve to be mocked, and that's true at a certain level. You can mock anybody. Anyone deserves mockery. Even Napoleon, even Caesar, Augustus, Genghis. It doesn't matter what history changing and altering hero you want to throw out. They all deserve to be mocked. But at the same time, they also deserve to be respected in some regard. These men did great things. And it seems we're doing a whole lot of mocking these days, not a whole lot of raising up. For example, the latest BBC documentary is going to be about Caesar and how we can look at Caesar as a threat to democracy today. And, sure, maybe, I guess? I understand that Caesar eventually destroyed the democracy in Rome and made it an empire. But also, Rome was unequivocally better for the people in Rome after that happened. You can look throughout Rome, and I would guarantee, without a shadow of a doubt, that every Roman citizen was better off in terms of quality of life after the fall of the Republic than before it. Simply because Rome became richer, it became larger, it became more and more powerful. Meaning there were more and more resources within its lands for the Romans to be better off. So, sure, you can say that Caesar destroyed democracy in Rome. Sure, that's true. That's absolutely true. But was that really a bad thing for Rome? It really wasn't, because the Romans were better off afterwards. And the parallels that the BBC is trying to make, that the rise of far-righters in their country is going to lead to a similar situation where you have a leader who may come up and destroy democracy in Britain. Or we can parallel that and say that will happen in the United States. This fear of Donald Trump coming into power again, and this time actually doing the things that he was fear-mongered into being years ago. The reality of that happening in either country is very slim, even if it is needed, which I'm not even sure if it is. But the fear-mongering is done so people can be like, oh, I can't, we must. Democracy is the founding guiding religious principle of modern society. We cannot have anyone or anything that would attempt to upheaval it. And sure, it's a forced system of government. I have never understood the attachment to it. But that being said, defending a simple system of government by tearing down one of the most important men to have ever lived, and whose actions directly changed the fabric of history of the entirety of Anatolia, the Levant, and in the entirety of the Romance language part of Europe. That's insane. It's called the Romance language part of Europe because the Romans conquered it. You can say that he's a threat to democracy, and that'd absolutely be true, but to use that as a cudgel against him, as if that is something negative, I don't know if that's really the case. Sure, in terms of freedom amongst Romans, maybe that was worse off, but everything for the Romans was better after, because their society got richer. They became conquerors of the world. They became the ultimate power in the world at that time, and stayed that way for hundreds of years. So, was it really worse for the Romans to do that? To become that boogeyman? To take on the reins of being the empire and not a republic? I don't know if that's really a bad thing for them. I don't know if that's the case. And that's not the only case. Napoleon and what they're doing to Caesar, or will be doing to Caesar, are not new. They will not be the last cases. I'm sure there will be more documentaries coming down the pipeline denigrating certain heroes. I mean, you have the homoerotic Jesus thing that they always got to keep doing. Like, they will try to tear down any historical figure of any relevant significance any way they can. And I find it puzzling, but at the same time, I know what it is for. It is for the upheaval of history, because history is inconvenient for a lot of people in these positions, because the history tells things that they don't want people to know, and that's fine. I get it. You have a position of power. You want to instill your own power and solidify it. I get the game. I get it. I understand. I recognize. I'm familiar with your game, as Shaq would say. But like, it still doesn't mean that I don't enjoy it and I don't like it. Like, I don't want to see the heroes of the past torn out, even if they're not my heroes. I'm not French. None of one in my family is French. As far as I am aware, there's not an ounce of French blood within me. There's also not an ounce of Italian blood. Not an ounce of German blood, of Russian blood, of any blood from any part of this world that I have just said. No, Spanish blood. Nowhere in this world, in my body, are blood from these regions. But at the same time, there are heroes from each of these countries, of each of these societies, of each of these histories, that I enjoy reading about, that I enjoy learning about, that I enjoy talking about, because these men made a difference, and those men made an important difference. They moved the world along in such a way that we got to where we are today. And I want to celebrate that. I would rather celebrate it than tear it down. And I understand that's not everybody's perception. People believe that the idols of the past need to be torn down because they are bad people. And I vehemently disagree with that. And I think that perspective is why we're in this place today, because we don't learn from our history. We do not venerate the past. We have abandoned tradition for the sake of this gelatinous progressive role where everything now is better than it ever was. And further we move along, I'm not sure if that's the case. I feel as though things rapidly are getting somewhat worse and somewhat better. It's a stale paradise, so to speak, where, yay, everything may on paper be better, but people are not happier. People are not better off. People feel worse than they did 10, 20 years ago. And I think, well, the great men aspect is not the only thing causing this. It is a big factor, because we, rather than look to the past for guidance on what to do today, we want to continue to forge along and keep building new rail for this railroad without any look about how they did it in the past, just putting down tracks with no idea of where we're heading and not using the map that was given to us to guide it. And sure, maybe that will lead us to a new prosperity where everything is better off for everyone, but I highly doubt that's the case. It is hard to get to somewhere you want to be without a map of where to go. And more as time goes on, I feel as though the denigration of the past is what's leading us to this point. The destruction and evaporation of what came before in place of what is today is going to continually degrade the senses of the people today, because they will have no perspective. Perspective is key. Being aware of what you are now compared to what was then is key. Self-awareness and perspective is very important to everyone, to every society, to every person, because if you lack it, then you will be severely deluded in what you can do and what can be done. Like, it's a fundamental part of what makes us human is our perception. And if we continue to destroy the perception of the past in favor of a rose-tinted perception of the present and the future, then things will continue to get worse. And they're not doing this to just, the modern heroes, the heroes we have of the past either. They're doing it for the people in, not that long ago. Like in America, we are continually destroying and tearing down monuments and statues to the people who came past, with each reasoning for doing so getting lesser and lesser. Like, yeah, we'll tear down Robert E. Lee, he fought for slavery, and we'll tear down this person, they supported slavery. We'll tear down this person, we supported slavery. Well, what happened when we get to the point of people who didn't support slavery, who didn't own slaves, people who founded this country? Like, what do you do with Jefferson, or Washington, or to any other president, Jackson, who did own slaves, or did support slavery, or did something that you did not like? Like, eventually you're going to get to a point where, like, is Lincoln going to take down the chopping block? The man who freed the slaves because he existed in a time during slavery and also was not very pro-abolitionist in his life? Like, is that the point we're going to get to, where the people of the past, simply being adjacent to slavery, is going to go? What happens when you get to people born after slavery who do not have any connection to it, but still did bad things? Like, are we going to tear them down? Are we going to tear down statues of people who are opposed civil rights? Are we going to get down to, like, it's just asinine. Eventually the goalposts will get moved to the point where, like, this guy said a single racial slur one time in his life, we have to tear down his statue. Or this guy said a certain slur against homosexuals one time in his life, his statue must be gone. Like, if we're going to get that puritanical, then no one deserves a statue. No one deserves to be revered, because no one can be the idyllic person that every person wants them to be. Everyone has their warts. Every great person, no matter how modern they are, no matter how clean they appear to be, have their warts. And that's shown time and again. Every hero of the day has shown to have their inconsistencies, to have their weaknesses, to have their issues, to have the things that make them not great. That exists. Every single person. It does not matter where you look. It does not matter who you look at. Whatever person they're uplifting today, for whatever cause. If you look hard enough, you will find the warts in them. The things that they did, that the progressives or the liberals or conservatives or the alt-right or whoever they lift up has their problems. They exist. They are terrible people, because we all are. And they will continue to show that if you look at them. If you shine the light on them long enough, they will reveal who they are. They always do, because people always will. We can only hold up a facade for so long. And that is okay, because no one is perfect. We are all bad. We all do bad things, because that's who we are as humans. We are flawed. We are inherently not good. It is through God and through other wings that we can become good. But that's okay, because not everyone has to be good. Genghis Khan is not a good man. Genghis Khan did a lot of evil. But Genghis Khan deserves respect in some capacities because of what he did as a commander in the conquering of the world. He deserves study. Same with every Roman emperor that basically ever existed. Horrible people who did bad things, but also deserve to be studied and respected in some capacity for the things they did in the furtherment of the empire to the behemoth that it became. Like, that is okay. We can do that. We should be able to do that. We should do that. There is things to study from these people. There are things to learn that we don't do today. But instead, we want to tear them down and to have them modified and changed and extolled from the way they are to something we want them to be rather than what happened. And it's sickening, because history is written by the victors. And the victors of today are not the people who won those wars. They are those who are usurping that place and positioning their own perspective on the past rather than what actually happened. Like, you would think as you get further away from history, you would discover more truth, not simply subvert it to support your own ideals. But that's what's happening. We are continuing destroying our own history for the benefit of the people today, rather than simply accepting what the history was and using it to guide us. Because the history will show that the things we're doing now are not going to guide us into a great place, and are continually going to further us back into a darker place. And that's just really the perspective we have. That's the situation we are currently in. That is the society we currently have. Not just doing this to people who actually existed. We also make up our own heroes. We create heroes in our stories. In fiction, we create heroes. We create those who do great things and who are supposed to be people we can look at and be like, yeah, that's a good person. This is something I should follow, because, we like our heroes in our fiction to emulate the heroes that we have in our real life. So there's a reason why people like Aragorn exist, or Star Wars for Luke Skywalker. There's a reason why all these people and characters exist. And it seems today we want to cheapen those qualities too, as you saw with The Last Jedi. Luke Skywalker doesn't end his story in a pretty good place. He becomes sort of a hermit who abandons everything and puts himself away from the world because he lost. Like, that's not really the exact image you would have of the hopeful hero who did whatever he could to save his father and his galaxy from evil. Like, that's not the image we want to have of him. And it seems more and more today they want to tear down the people of the past, such as Luke Skywalker, for a new character, obviously. And that happens. And they do it because they don't have ideas, because they can't create until they tear down fictional heroes to create new heroes that are nowhere near facsimiles of the heroes that they already created. There were really 3 inciting events that made me consider this perspective and get, angry to the point I wanted to talk about it. One was the BBC documentary coming out about Caesar and how it just seems so slanted against him. The guy would never have a chance no matter what they tried to say. The second was the Napoleon movie being, as anti-Napoleon as it is, which seems odd because it's a story about the man, but they seemingly only want to be comedic about it, and you need to lighten up, even if the story is not actually historically accurate. Because I'm trying to make a good movie, I'm not trying to tell an accurate story, but okay. And the other one, the third incident, was the destruction of the Robert E. Lee statue and the show that was made about it. Now, look, Lee is a controversial, to say the least, character in American history. Man is unarguably one of the greatest generals to ever live in terms of Americans. One of the greatest American generals of all time. The things he did and his brilliance on the battlefield was very, very well documented and very well respected among those who understand the history. But at the same time, he fought for the wrong side. Lee didn't even support slavery, depending on if you read his own memoirs, or maybe he did, and that's revisionist history. Whatever perspective you want to have, I really don't care. If you want to believe that Lee was an incorrigible racist, evil man who wanted to have slavery and hated black people, sure. If you wanted to believe he was somewhere not at that far right, and wanted to just kind of wanted to fight for his people, and even if it was for slavery, a position that he was more neutral about than most of his time, then sure, go ahead at it. The perspective that you have, I really don't care about. It's more about the destruction of the man and the tearing up of everything about him. They destroyed the mural to his horse. It's a horse! What is a horse going to do to anybody? It's just a horse! And the teardown of Lee and the seemingly this historical destruction they want to do to him, it just boggles my mind and gets me angry, because this is an American. This is one of our people. This is not some other. This isn't Napoleon, who was a French man, and it's funny to make memes about him, who lived in the hundreds of years ago, and people have issues about him, but it's funny to make fun of him. We're not actually denigrating him that much. And Julius Caesar's a guy who lived thousands of years ago, who really cares if you want to make a few jokes at his expense, right? Or to tear him down a little bit and give you a slight little cautionary tale about the destruction of democracy. But Lee's an American. Lee is one of us. I mean, Lee, whether you want to like his politics and what he did or not, is an American who fought for this country on multiple chances in multiple wars and helped gain land. Man fought in the Mexican-American War. Man fought for the greatest military conquest in terms of land expansion in this country's history. Man earned his stripes in that war, and what's made him someone that the South wanted to have on his side back during the Civil War. That's what earned him that position. And simply tearing down a man who wanted to fight for the people of his society, it seems insane to me. Lee simply wanted to fight for the people of Virginia. If Virginia fought for the Union, he would have fought for the Union. Lee was not married to the South. He was not married to the Confederacy. He was married to his home of Virginia. And there's always something honorable about a man fighting for his home. Hell, we hold up every single person who fought in any world war for America, or the United Kingdom, or France. We hold them up simply because they fought for, their home. And when Lee fights with his home, he's branded, an Orville person. Even though after the war he came back to train American soldiers, it showed that Lee was not bitter about the war, did not, hate the Union for what happened during the war. He simply wanted to fight for his people. He was not fighting in anger towards the Union. He was not fighting to break America. He was fighting to preserve his home. And even if it was for the traitor side, I feel like we should still be allowed to enjoy him, to praise him, because he was a great person, or at least a great man who did great things. Like, he is one of the greatest Americans of all time in terms of what he did. But he's also seen as one of the greatest traitors because he fought for the rebellion. And I get that. I understand. And I would understand if you wanted to, put him in a museum and maybe, give some context or have whatever you want. Like, maybe there didn't need to be the destruction of Lee. I find that to be reprehensible. The destruction of a man simply because he fought for politics that you did not enjoy seems a bit strange to me. And look, I know people are going to say, but he fought for the CSA and he was racist. And all these things. And sure, maybe they're true. They probably are true. He definitely probably was a racist, because everyone back then was racist. Even Abraham Lincoln was a racist. Everyone back then was a racist in some shape or form, fashion, whether it was towards black people, Latinos, Asians, Turks, Arabs, whoever you want to say, Jews, whatever racial group you want to. Everyone of every racial group was racist towards somebody back then. And the hint you want to know is, they still are today. And that's just what happened. That is the reality of the situation we have in front of us. People are always going to be bad. The great men of the past are always going to be bad by modern standards in some capacity. And rather than trying to tear them down or destroy them or to do anything untoward to them because they simply do not match with your politics today, it is better off to study them, to learn, and to take away things from them that you don't like so you don't emulate them, and take away the things you do like because they did things that were important and probably did some good. Like, as much as people want to tear down Caesar did a lot of good things. Many people want to tear down Napoleon did a lot of good things. Many people want to tear down any historical figure ever that exists. You want to tear them down. They did good things objectively. They did things that would be good to emulate in some capacity because it worked. It raised them to the top. No matter what you want to say about these men in any capacity, they did things that helped them raise the top. So they need to be upheld for some reason, even just a little bit. And I feel like if we're not going to take that history and what they did into consideration, then we're just dooming ourselves to have any of the mistakes these men did that eventually destroyed their own empire. And personally, I want to see the American experiment continue. Whether that be in a democracy or not is no concern to me. But if we continue down this path, there won't be an America of any style if we continue down this dark road of the destruction of our history and the prevention of ourselves from continuing to establish societies that respect our past and use it to create a future that we all can benefit from.